We actually had, before Ari, we had Esteban, their CEO, come.
Oh, okay.
The very first DeFi retreat in Malibu. So that's
that
how
was
we
the one
actually
in the
got
mansion,
connected
right?
with
That's
Ari.
I think the mansion's the one that caught my eye. I'm like, yo, mansion. I'd like to listen to people in a nice mansion. Maybe Eric will listen, and then you had the DJ Eric Voorhees. I think at the time, I think
Yeah,
that was pretty
that was the
exciting.
next, the year after that,
Okay.
Eric DJ. Yeah, we did have another. There was a DJ, a good friend of mine from UI that DJ'd in Malibu. I don't know if I would call it a mansion. It was more like a house, and we did the whole event outside because it was just after the lockdowns got lifted, and Delta was the first kind of variation of COVID that was a big concern. Was just like infecting everyone. And Delta like came around, I want to say like a month before the retreat was supposed to happen. And I was freaking out, like, what do we do? And I was like, we're just going to do the whole event outside. The best air ventilation you can get is outside. So we'll just do that. Ended up, again, probably got very lucky, but the event was very successful. And I think one of the, I guess, ways for me to see if an event had a big success or not is just by seeing if people are talking about it and how they're talking about the certain events, if they participated in the past. And I still have folks that come to our events and say like, man, that event in Malibu was incredible. And I was like, that's how I know it was a good event. And we probably made all the right decisions back in the day.
That's awesome. Now it's Chatham House rules, so people can't actually talk about what is being said, or there's no video. Do you feel that's an attractor that attracts a lot of people because they actually have to go there and listen if they want to be a part of the event? But is it also hard because it does stifle maybe innovation when it comes to promoting the event because you don't have that content to attract people in? How do you think about the Chatham House rules? Was that kind of like a deal breaker? Like you had to have Chatham House rules from your aspect?
It was something that came around kind of by accident as well. It wasn't something that was planned before we launched the first Fintech retreat. Back in the day, we were talking to, there was one speaker that was supposed to come to Fintech retreat for the first edition from a large financial institution. And there was one regulator, and they asked the same question if there's going to be press or recordings there. And I was like, well, why do you ask that? And they were like, well, if there's going to be press and recordings, there's a bigger approval process that we have to go through internally. And I really wanted to get those people. So it was kind of no-brainer. I pretty much replied back in less than a minute. And I said that there's going to be no press. It's fine. Like, we're just going to restrict it. Just come. That was somewhat by accident. Now, looking back, I definitely think it was the right decision to make because type of conversations you can have under a Chatham House rule environment are very different from the ones that you might hear on a bigger mainstream conference stage when there's cameras, when there's recordings. People tend to get a little bit more comfortable speaking on topics that they would not even be able to speak, even if they would want to cover, they won't be able to do it, obviously for many reasons from both private and public sector. But now over the years, once we kind of started to understand what we want those retreats to be, Chatham House was definitely one of the best decisions we made at the very beginning. Yes, it comes with its own challenges of not being, as you mentioned, not being able to create marketing materials or any kind of like content that you would use for post-event promotion or attract people, to potentially come to your next event. But I feel like for us, it's a challenge that we're definitely happy to take on and to maintain the quality of the conversations that we have every year.
And as a consumer of it, it was definitely a better conversation in San Francisco when I was there. It was definitely a better version of a conversation that you naturally hear at some of the bigger conferences. So I do agree. As a content producer, it kills me that I can't take some of that and share it with other people so they can also see the greatness. But now you've run a few of these events, both DeFi and FinTech. What are some of the trends you're seeing in these areas that either people are dying to hear spoken about on the panels, or that you hear some of the speakers kind of talking about before the event or during the event to the side, like, hey, you need to look out for real world, asset tokenization? What are some of the things that you're hearing a lot more in conversations that you may have not heard at the start of these gatherings?
Well, I think there is far better experts than me to talk on these topics. I'm more kind of a passive learner and listener at our own events. But some of the trends in FinTech that definitely come to mind from kind of recent conversations are, of course, AI is a big trend, but I feel like a lot of times when people talk about AI, it's definitely overhyped for what it actually is. A lot of conversations for especially big financial institutions right now, it's all about how can we reduce costs by using AI? And at the end of the day, AI, at least today, it's great for huge data processing. A lot of products that are being built are exactly focused on that. And of course, there's, applications for customer service interactions and any I feel like any part of business that can be automated and help reduce costs by the use of AI are being looked upon right now. And there's, of course, other applications such as credit decisioning in AI, which there's a lot of challenges with that because there's a lot of regulations that are put in place to protect consumers, to make sure that any kind of lending decisions are being non-biased. And there's still, depending on who you talk to, a lot of controversy around if AI is able to make non-biased decisions nowadays or not, based on the type of information it's being fed and it's being trained on. Other trends are, I guess, cash flow underwriting is becoming a bigger thing than it used to be, and I'm excited to do that. We were looking into cash flow underwriting in 2019, where we were trying to build our buy now pay later product. So we're trying to get away from like FICO scores and credit reports for folks and getting an idea of what actually is happening in their bank accounts and make a decision based on that. So there's a number of companies that are launching products right now that are cash flow. And I think another big topic, and it's always been in both traditional finance or digital assets space, it's regulation.
Yeah.
It's regulation, especially when it comes to the big financial institutions accepting or launching any kind of technologies or absorbing any kind of new technologies. And that's kind of an interesting loop, because you have all these startups that are building these innovative technologies, and their end goal is, for a lot of them, is to sell to these big banks and big institutions. But the big financial institutions will not touch a technology. They won't even look into that direction unless whoever is the regulator explicitly told them that this specific technology A is allowed to be, done in your field under, let's say, this set of rules. Even if the regulator is not saying anything, even if they said no, the big financial institution will still not look at that because it has to be explicitly regulated and green-lighted by their regulator. So regulation
here in the US, right, where the regulators are kind of vague, right? Like they're saying legally you can do this, but we wouldn't if we were you. The US is very vague, and then 3 years later you're getting sued. So I think, especially with the US, with a lot of capital coming out of their investments, although they're dumping in a lot of institutional money, I think they're still very wary and playing on the sidelines with a lot of these areas. Because they do, as your point, they do not want to commit unless it's fully compliant. And then a lot of organizations, and we're seeing with crypto exchanges, although they look fully compliant on the outside, there's a lot of things happening on the back end that regulators aren't even privy to. So investors aren't looking to touch that, and it's kind of given the industry kind of a black mark or a black eye in regards to that. Talk to me a little bit about the financial club. That's one area of the business that you seem like you're having these esteemed conversations with some of the best in the industry, including VCs, which is an interesting aspect to your conferences. You have a lot of different people sitting at the table. When I was there, I was talking to VCs. I was speaking to people in regulatory compliance, speaking to people in payments and fraud prevention, just a really diverse group. Is the financial club just a mini, more segregated and intense version of the retreats and gatherings, or is this something different altogether?
I feel like the financial club for us was the next step with building a community. It took me personally a couple of years to understand what the fintech retreats should be based on the people that we're accepting. So over the years, if we've done anything with the retreats, I realized we built an incredible community, but we only get to see them twice. Like some people come to both fintech and DeFi retreats, so we'd see them twice a year, or folks that only come to one of the events, we'd see them once a year. So we had an idea at the end of last year to launch a business club type of model, which is nothing innovative. But the goal was to give more opportunities for some of these folks with more senior roles to spend time together, versus just, seeing them once or twice a year at our retreats. Yeah, so we launched in San Francisco and New York in March. Yeah, it was the beginning of March of this year. And the whole premise was we'll do 6 meetings in San Francisco about every 2 months, 6 in New York. We'll try to get people together. We'll do breakfast. We'll invite special guests because we already have relationship with some thought leaders in the space, and we might be able to get some regulators to come for a small intimate breakfast, some private sector leaders. And from there, we just see what happens. So it's kind of been an interesting journey and kind of learning curve for me with the financial club as well, because I've never really worked in a business where your whole business models is kind of revolving around building a community and people, right?
Your whole business follows people, right?
Right. So it's who who you can bring in, and whoever you can bring in is that of value to everyone else who's going to be there. It's pretty much, it's pretty simple formula, but very hard to attain successful result. So yeah, the club have been very interesting so far. We've been kind of consistently growing it. We were looking into ways to how to add more value to club members. So one of the things that we could do right away is, we already run the retreat, so we'll give them access to all of our retreats for free if they're in the club. But then another aspect that I've been kind of working on in the past, I want to say 5 or 6 months, was to add outside partnerships from companies that could bring products and have them interface with the financial club members in ways that it would provide value to club members, of course. So we just announced this first partnership with this company called Select, which is pretty incredible. I met their current founder, Carlo, in person, actually, about a month and a half ago. So We really haven't known each other so long, but we clicked pretty quickly, and they have an interesting product that can be used by not only our club members, but also retreat goers, because they give this discounts to like hotels, which I use personally, and it freaking works. I was like, oh, wow, it's actually a real product and it works. So we thought it was kind of an interesting way to add additional value to club members. And we have some things that we want to continue testing and playing with in 2024. And we'll see some of them, I'm sure, are going to be bad ideas, and others might be something worth spending time on.